All right. Good morning, guys. And here we are once again. It is February 24th today. And Steve's nodding. I got that right? 2016. Here we are, right towards the end of the second month of the year. So, well, let's turn to Genesis chapter 33. Like we have been doing, I think we're getting right down to the end of this chapter. I'd like for us to read verses 18 through 20. So if someone could mark there and be ready to read that. And then once we read that, what I'd like to do is somebody turn to 28, verses 10 through 22, and be ready to read either that in its entirety or a portion. Well, just make sure maybe one person read 10 through 22, because what it's going to do is put 18 through 20 in context to what we're talking about. So let's read first of all 33, 18 through 20, and then if someone could be prepared to read 28, 10 through 22.
And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Paddan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El, O Israel.
Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on the earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. When Jacob woke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head, and he set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and all of that, and of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth.
All right, good. Thank you guys for reading. So what 28 does, that Jeff just read, 10 through 22, is the backstory to what we are now seeing 20 plus years later. I think it's more than that, but a conservative figure, it's at least 20 years. So 28, 10 through 22 is Jacob leaving and going on his journey, leaving the land of Canaan and going to Haran. There he lives a good chunk of his adult life, finds a wife, raises his family, the whole interaction with Uncle Laban and everything that we've been looking about. And now 20 plus years later, and again, I think it's way more than that, is now coming back to the land and coming into the land. This is the first text where we read he's actually entered into Canaan, where we've been camping with the Peniel, and that is on the other side of Jordan. He now crosses Jordan from Sukkot and he goes to this place called Shechem, and that's where we're going to pick up this morning. A little bit of review. Last time we talked about this phrase that really captured my attention, according to the pace. And I brought out last time the idea of contrasting the early Jacob, the young Jacob, with now the more mature Jacob, who's been knocked around in life a bit and has learned a thing or three. And the idea that when Jacob was a younger man, and correlating to when we are younger men, we tend to want to squeeze life into a mold. We want it to make it happen. And what this whole phrase is Jacob graciously rejects his brother's help by saying, I have to go according to my own pace here. And just a realization that life has real parameters built in, and to be able to adapt to that is a real graceful thing to be able to do as we age. 4 things we looked at last time, and I won't go over those, but that's just the context. At that point, across Jordan, Transjordan, on the east side of the Jordan River, the two brothers part. Esau heads south to Seir, and Jacob crosses the river and makes his way up to Shechem. Here's another map I found in one of my old books that I've had around for years. I really like this map, much better than what I showed you last time. But here is Penuel. We've been hanging out here. Here's the Jabbok River, where he met his brother right in here. He travels to Sukkot, and that's where we left last week. The Jordan River is running right through here, and the Jordan River is in a rift. It's like this, and it's just carved out. And so going down to the Jordan River, he was near the shore. I don't know what the elevation drop is between Sukkot and the river. It could be right on the river. My guess it is. And the river is Jordan River is like a wide, like an irrigation ditch, really. That's really.
Well, the Poudre and Lake Fall, huh?
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar in width to the Poudre River. But here he crosses Jordan, and now he's got a trek. He's actually below sea level here. This flows out of the Galilee, and Galilee is 500 feet. The surface of the water is 500 feet below sea level, and it flows into the Dead Sea at almost 1,300 feet below sea level. So there's quite a drop. It flows its entirety below sea level. The only river in the world that does that. So he crosses, and now he has to make this trek up this hill. And as you're driving, there's a road that runs right along here, and as you're driving, you really feel the mountains off to the west. And so he made his way up, and to get to the internal route, which is at the backbone. This is the backbone of Israel here, and there's a route. There's a natural route that runs there to get to the top, and then running along the internal, what they call the internal trade route. And so he gets to Shechem, and he arrives, he sets up camp, he buys some property, and he builds an altar. Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense, but I'm going to raise kind of an interesting question here in just a little bit. So that's his route. Just start to look at this. Comparing back in 28, right here that Jeff read, and then over here to today's text, 18 through 20, which is 20 plus years later. Comparing these two texts of what is happening. The text in one case is Genesis 28, 10 through 22, and then over here 33, 18 through 12. They both have a place. One is the place Bethel. Bethel is located 20 miles south. Jacob is now here at Shechem, and Bethel is here, 20 miles south. To get from Bethel to Beersheba, where he started 20 plus years ago, is another 65 miles. So he's actually 85 miles from home and 20 miles from Bethel. He's come 400 plus miles. That kind of puts it in context, and I'm going to build kind of a question here. So, moving on, he's at Bethel before. He's at Shechem now, 20 miles short. At Bethel, 20-some years ago, is where Jeff just read. He had the vision, the dream of Jacob's ladder, the angels ascending and descending, and that's where God Almighty imparted the blessing or the promise. I'm going to bless you. It's first of all given to Abraham, then Isaac, and now Jacob. This blessing or this promise, there is a land, there is a people, and there is a presence. That's part of that. Right down here, the promise is right here. In this promise of God, I'm going to do something to you in order to do something through you. That's what we've talked about. We've talked about that several times. That there is the nations of the earth will be blessed through you, Jacob. First given to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. This was a huge realization. This is what set the precedence for his journey 20-some years ago, and it happened at this place. He wakes up and he says, this is none other than the house of God. Bethel, house of God. So he builds an altar there 20-some years ago. And then he says, as Jeff read, right here, this vow. He makes a vow. 20-some years ago, he says, if God will be with me and bring me back safely, shalom, peace, peacefully is the word in Hebrew. If God will bring me back shalom, from shalom, then God will be my God. And it's no different than us. God, if you come through, I will serve you. He makes a commitment. I will make a personal commitment. So he goes out, he goes to Haran. We know that story intimately. And now he comes back. He's now in the land. He's at Shechem. His realization now is that he has a new name. He's had this encounter with this being, and he renamed the place. God gave him a new name, Israel, one who contends with God. So he's now operating under a new identity. Something has changed in this man's life. The promise now in Jacob's mind is fulfilled, because it says in the text, he came safely, shalom, to Shechem. I think that's interesting. I think it's a direct reference back to when he left Bethel and the vow he made. He came safely to Shechem. And there he builds an altar, sets up an altar, and he names the place Eloah Yisrael, God, the God of Israel. Remember the vow. If God brings me back safely, then God will be my God. I mean, it's like as clear as the nose on our face. Is this in Jacob's mind is the fulfillment of the vow he made 20 plus years earlier. The question is, why here? Why now? If I were Jacob and I had this experience 20 some years ago, that would be driving my actions from that day forward? If Bethel had meant, if this occurred to me at Bethel, I would want to return to Bethel, wouldn't you? So that's the question I'm raising. Why? Before I do that, I love this quote by T.S. Eliot. This Jacob has gone out, and now he's returning after what life has done and what he's experienced. And as T.S. Eliot said, we shall never not cease from exploration. In the end of all our exploration is to return to the place for which we started and know the place for the first time. Is that not true? What goes around comes around, but we know it differently. We've gone out, and what a graphic and wonderful picture this is, Jacob's journey of going out, experiencing what he needed to experience in life, and now he's returning, but now he knows the place for the first time. So that's what the two arrows, are trying to depict. We go out and we return. And this is counter to how many of us view life as linear. We're supposed to keep going up and up and up, I guess. But experience tells us that that's not what happens. Here he's going out and he's returning back, but yet he knows this place so differently. He sees, he hears differently, he sees differently, he feels differently, he reacts differently. Totally different than what he did 20 some years ago. And it has everything to do with what has occurred in his life. Not same as you and I. So there he's returning. And now in that context, that returning, I've got this big however. The however in my mind is Jacob is 20 miles short. I just find this interesting. Why here? Why Shechem? Shechem the name means neck, and it's referencing neck between two shoulders. Shechem, I remember the day I was at Shechem, a mountain on both sides, Ebal and Gerizim. And it'll have history later when Jacob brings the 12 tribes of Israel and puts half of them on one mountain and half of them on the other, and he reads the book of Deuteronomy.
Moses.
What was that?
You said Jacob, Moses.
Oh, Moses, excuse me. Yeah. And thank you, Bill. You know what? You're my wingman. But I think Jacob, I think Joshua brings the people there later as well.
Right.
Yeah, but they don't do the whole thing there. Things get a little bit out of whack up here after.
Oh, my hard drive is messed up. Got bad sections.
But it has history. But really, there's not a lot of history. Abraham may have had something happen here. I'm not sure. At Shechem? Okay, so that has bearing. Charlie said that Abraham built his first altar at Shechem. Yeah, that has bearing, but as a young man, he really didn't know his grandfather. I'm building a case that if Bethel was so important and I'm 20 miles short, why would I stop? Why would I buy property and build this altar here? It's... So that's what I want to talk about. Why do you guys think... Let's take 4 minutes. Around your tables, why do you think... And then I'll get you back together. 4 minutes. Why do you guys think Jacob came to Shechem, he purchased property, he built this altar, and then I'll bring this back together and we'll kind of see what the group says. So I'll give you 4 minutes. Why don't you guys talk about it?
GPS.
GPS was He said someone leave and everyone's over there. He's just tired. He's done.
My first thought, it sounded to me like there was no chance in that spot. Maybe he was thinking, I'm in that area where God is going to build me all this. As soon as I enter it, basically, I'm gonna claim it. That was my thought.
Well, it's interesting when you're saying, when you go back to the beginning, you're gonna have to see it different. And I always go, contemporary author, Peter Boyle.
I don't know, but read that note on it. It has a tremendous note.
Well, that's on the next chapter.
You have it from verse 20. Here's 20.
Erected an altar, erected there an altar. Soon called it El Israel. Jacob formally acknowledged the God of his fathers as his God also, 28:21. But he went to Shechem and did not return to Bethel. That meant trouble.
So the scripture, at least the comment here, seems to indicate this wasn't what he should have done. But in hindsight, yeah, like it too, it's everything in the movie mirror. That's an interpretation. I was amazed. I just looked at that for all that process. And I remember asking, it's so about 9-year-old kid with all this fragments just happening in his job. Because he didn't go all the way to that and hang on an area that wasn't really rich.
It was great when you were
Maybe he was,
15 or 20 years old.
looking ahead,
As you so often do.
knowing that there is going to be more trouble there. He might be thinking, okay, God said this land is going to be mine. Just be the whole land. He wasn't born right there. He to drive him out. Causing trouble. He waited. He said 34 happened.
No, looking ahead, at the end of that chapter, after the voice he's mad, he's pissed, he rips his kids and says, you have now made an stench in the nostrils of the people. I don't like what you did. If he didn't do it, his sons did.
Yeah.
So it's got to be pretty active killing. Thanks. That's a certain humor.
Okay, guys, we don't want to exhaust the subject. The question on the table, around your table, has been why do you think Jacob would make this investment at Shechem 20 miles, I'm calling it 20 miles short. That's what's in my head. Because I think if I were in his sandals, I would want to go back to Bethel and to go back to that place and to experience what has occurred and build and worship there. But that's me, you know. But I'd like to hear what do you guys think? Why did he do it? Wait, just go to this table here.
Well, go ahead, Art. I mean, Art has a note, but looking a little farther ahead because
You can't, that's
I think
illegal.
he made a mistake.
What's that?
I think he made a mistake.
Okay, so a mistake. Why would he make a mistake after, man,
That's tired, exhausted. Things
Okay.
worked out. Esau, he's done. He's ready to stop.
okay, so you're looking at it as a mistake and tired. I know what it is to be tired, and so do you. I think that's valid. So I'm going to write fatigue.
Okay.
He's tired. Man, it's been a long journey. So what? Okay.
Bethel wasn't quite what he expected. 20 years or whatever it is was quite a bit
Yeah,
different,
GPS.
probably. So Shechem is the new Bethel.
So Shechem is New Bethel. Well, why would it be New Bethel?
Because
It's,
Bethel wasn't what he thought it would be after 20 years.
well, he hasn't arrived yet. Okay.
Mike's not gonna let you off that easy.
Well, no, I don't want to put, Charlie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to try to draw you out. What you guys, maybe help your bro out there.
Dick left and got coffee.
Could it be Bethel or Shechem seemed fine? Shechem seemed fine, good enough, possibly.
Must be.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but okay. So one of you other guys, Shechem seemed fine.
Was the altar that he built at that time later mentioned in the Bible, or is the marking point for?
I don't know.
In the Bible?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think there was another altar someplace, and they referred to it, oh, that was built by so and so, and that kind of was an anchor for
Yeah.
their faith.
Yeah. I don't know. But as we take the story at face value, we don't, let's pretend we don't know the rest of the story. As you're looking at this man's life, and we've been on this journey very, very intimately with him, and he arrives, and I just think, gee, if I only had 20 more miles to get to this place that I think is very, very significant, why did he fall short? Why did he do it here, Jim?
Does it got anything to do with his daughter being raped there?
Well, that hasn't happened yet. That hasn't happened yet. But I wanted to camp here for a little bit because I'd like to look at the next story, which is going to be that story, in light of this question. See, that's why we're talking about it. Dick.
Well, we were kind of in agreement here that we felt that he was trying to walk with God, and God had told him to do that.
That's it.
And why would he stop there and build an altar? And that's very significant, build an altar there.
Yeah.
We just felt like God he heard from God.
Okay. All right. He heard from God. I think that is as valid as anything else. Why? Yeah. He heard from God.
How significant was it that Abraham built an altar there?
I think, Charlie, that says
I think
bearing.
that would be a significant monument there.
Do we know for sure Abraham did? Okay, I think so.
It says so it's 12:6. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it would be in chapter 12.
Mike,
Yep.
there's a big,
6 and 7.
Okay,
So we
good.
built an altar there to the Lord, it says here.
I think that's very significant. Good.
you're introducing something, and you've introduced it all along, that really is a shift in perspective on reading the Old Testament. And that's that we historically read it as everything is sacred. Everything he did, and that we don't question the motives of what's going on here.
Yeah.
And now we're reading it as, can we introduce the possibility that this was wrong? And it's given to us for a reason to show it was wrong, versus this is what God told him to do. Back to what Dick the Cook said. It really changes our focus of how we read the scripture.
Yeah.
Do we allow human error, human mistakes to be part of the story?
Oh, I think we've got to allow human error.
Well, that's significant. I mean, Dick said.
Yeah.
he
But
did
are
it.
they really errors?
Yeah, did God tell him to be here or not?
Yeah.
Or is this something he did he shouldn't have done?
I mean, I can put myself in his shoes, and okay, I'm coming off a 425-mile trek. I've had this huge relief by reconciling with my brother. I'm still alive, and my family's still alive, so there's a high degree of gratefulness there. I'm physically exhausted. This guy is no young man. He imagine be out on the trail day after day after day after day. You come into the promised land, and Shechem is a different environment than what he's been experiencing. There is no question. It's nice. I mean, it's not paradise by any means, but it's a nice place. There's mountains, there's water, it's beautiful, and I think, gee, let's just set up camp here. Yeah, Ellen.
You know, sometimes when you're taking a journey, there'll be like, before the final step, there'll be a little celebration before you go that last
Yep,
step, because
yep.
you know you're getting there.
Yeah.
And that could have been what it was.
Yeah, I definitely, that is a good point, because definitely he's identified Shechem as arriving to the promise of God. In his mind, it's fulfilled. And that's, even though it's geographically 20 miles short, and I could very well be building this up falsely, this importance. I'm just kind of putting myself in his place. But he definitely identifies Shechem as the location. And there is in the blessing, or in the promise, as stated in 28, you'd notice that at that location, God says, I'm going to expand you north, south, east, and west. So there is more latitude than there. And so, anyway, let's just put that on hold. I wasn't planning on getting resolved to this question. I think it's a really interesting question. And it may have bearing, I have no hidden agenda here. It may have bearing in our discussion next time with this very, very disturbing story that we're wondering, gee, what is this all about? So let's pick up in, I believe we'll move on to chapter 34 next week.
And can we add a question to that?
Yes.
Who did he tithe to?
What's that?
Who did he tithe to?
Yeah. Good question. All right, we'll put that one on. That's good. All right. Well, see you guys next time.
It says.